Hey, welcome to The Feast Life, where we empower you, the modern homeschool mom, to create a life in homeschool you love. I'm Julie Ross, the creator of the award-winning curriculum A Gentle Feast, a homeschool veteran of over 20 years, and a certified Christian life coach. Charlotte Mason said, life should be all living, not a mere tedious passing of time. So on this show, we seek to savor the feast of life. So go get your favorite beverage and pull up a chair. You're welcome at this table. Hey everyone, welcome to The Feast Life. I'm your host, Julie Ross, and I'm here today with Brittney McGann, the author of Scouting for Wild Ones. Hey Brittney.
Hi, Julie.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to talk about this. I have been sharing your book on A Gentle Feast for several years now, but I'm excited to share this with a new audience. And we are also releasing a wild robot guide that kind of ties this into the new movie release. So I thought it was a great time to bring you back on the podcast and talk about scouting and what it is, what it's not, and hopefully get some families to give it a try. So to start off, tell us a little bit about yourself and your kind of homeschool journey and how you ended up getting interested in this topic in the first place.
Okay, so I have been homeschooling for, I think I'm on my 12th year.
Wow.
I started when my oldest, she never went to school. She started in kindergarten, and I got interested in Charlotte Mason when she was about 3.5. So I've been in it for a while. Nature study was one of the things that really pulled me in. And so once I really got going with nature study, and researching in Mason's books and in all the PR articles, I discovered that scouting was a really big component of what they did. And then I just went down that rabbit trail. I read the books that were recommended, and I really tried to understand what was going on with scouting. So I started a scouting group. We had moved about an hour from our previous group, and I thought scouting would be a really neat thing to try to find friends and to do with other people. So that's what I did after a couple of years of working with that scouting group and figuring it out because I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. I decided that it would be neat to put together something that could help other people. And you were kind enough to put it out for me so that it would be able to be out in the Charlotte Mason world. So that's how I got going with it, just nerding out and exploring Charlotte Mason like some of us tend to do.
Yeah, for sure. I can totally relate to that. So, if parents aren't familiar, what did Charlotte Mason include and why did she include this topic, do you think?
Charlotte Mason actually, she was around at the beginning of the whole scouting movement. So we tend to know Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, but the current form of Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts is pretty different from what it was in Mason's era. It started out as part of like campaigning for military people.
Mm.
So a scout would have been someone that you sent ahead of the rest of the army to investigate the opposing army and try to understand where they were going, what they were doing, get information about how many troops there were, and figure out what they were planning. And then they would report back to their army. So a scout had to have a whole variety of different skills.
Mhm.
And Mason took those skills and tried to incorporate them into things that the children could learn. So it would have been things like tracking, understanding direction, how to find direction with the stars or with the sun, learning how to camp well, how to hide so that you could go undetected and carry out your reconnaissance of what the other side was doing. There was a lot of it that she did incorporate, and she actually used one of the manuals that the military used for scouting.
Oh, wow. Okay. So do you think her motivation, obviously you're not her, but was she focusing more on the citizenship aspect? A lot of people sometimes put it with nature studies. So where do you see it fitting or how did she fit it in?
I honestly think that it was its own thing. So with nature studies, very observational, and it's about head knowledge. So you're observing plants and animals. As a big part of nature study, we paint them or draw them to really get a good understanding of what you're seeing.
Yeah.
You would observe behavior of animals or notice how a plant or a tree changes during the different seasons. And so I think nature study is more about head knowledge, which is good. It helps you to understand a thing, to appreciate a thing, and appreciate its beauty and the creation aspect of it. But with scouting, it's taking that knowledge and then applying it. So there's definitely a citizenship component to it because you're learning, like the motto, the Scouts motto is be prepared. So you're learning how your knowledge can be ready to serve other people a variety of different ways, whether that's helping someone who's lost or helping someone who's in need in some way, noticing what the need is and being able to take care of it. Putting others first, that is a big thing as well, to serve God and serve your fellow man. So it's got a little bit of nature study, a little bit of citizenship. It's also got an aspect of handicrafts. So you would need to know how to do a lot of different things, how to make different things, like knot tying is in there, shelter building, some woodworking, but not with the idea of mastery, just with the idea of taking those elements of all these different things that you know so that you can be prepared to serve whatever purpose there is.
Mm.
So that's why I feel like even though it has components of a lot of other things that are in Charlotte Mason education, it's really its own separate subject.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I do feel like it ties in with her whole overarching philosophy of that children are like holistic and we're looking at the like the complete child because it does incorporate so
Right.
many other things. It's not something that's like completely separate, completely different than all the other things you're doing. It actually enhances, like you're saying, the nature study and the handicrafts and the citizenship and even like geography, outdoor geography and the kind of things that she taught, like they all can tie in and either enhance scouting or scouting can enhance those subjects. They're not all separate and we're working those things all together, which I think is really cool. So for a parent who's like, the idea of outside scouting stuff really freaks me out, how would you recommend they get started with something like this? Did you grow up scouting? Because I did not.
No, I
Yeah,
didn't grow up with scouting. Like I said, I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. I thought it was really cool,
yeah,
but I couldn't. Even now I have trouble with direction. I live in North Carolina and there's lots of trees everywhere and all the roads turn different directions, so I
yeah.
have to really think, where did the sun come up? Which direction am I going? Where's the sun going down? So yeah, I didn't know how to do any of this stuff, and that's why as I was learning how to do things, I started writing it down. I started trying to make it so that it would be easy for other people to do this. So I do think that Scouting for Wild Ones is a really good place to start if you don't know how to do any of this stuff, because it's essentially scripted. It tells you what to say, it tells you what answers you should be expecting from the children, and gives an overview of how to start with scouting. It's not meant to be something that you could survive in the wilderness with, but it's to
Yeah,
get you started going that direction. So I think it's great for like kids from about 5 to 12 is probably the ideal age group for getting started
yeah.
so that it builds their interest. Because if you were to start with Scouting for Wild Ones, it gives you enough of an overview of scouting that if you get really interested in one thing or another, you would know that you loved it. For example, with finding direction, if you really get into hiking and camping and learning direction, you can go for orienteering and do miles and miles long hikes where you're competing with other kids to find your way.
That's good.
So, yeah, there's a lot of possibilities with it once you get started.
Or even geocaching that we recently got.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is so fun.
Yeah, I've never tried it, but I know some people who have done it and love it.
Yeah, so we actually went with 1,000 hours outside last
Mhm.
week to whitewater raft and camp for 5 days in the desert in Utah.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I have never done anything like that my whole entire life. And my kids haven't either. So this was
Yeah.
a very big learning curve. But the whole time I was on this trip, we slept in, we had to put up our own tents and they fed us, which I'm very grateful for. And they were the guides on the river and stuff like that. But like the whole time on this trip, I kept thinking about your book and how all of those chapters would be so valuable. The stars were, I've never seen anything so beautiful in my entire life. And I'm like, oh, I wish I had our like consolation cards. Or we'd be on the beach and we're like, what animal tracks are those? And I'm like, I don't know. And I
Yeah.
mixed having like my tree identification app. Um, or my bird app, but there's no service there. So
I know.
I couldn't put up my app to the tree trying to figure out what it was. And I was like, oh, I wish I had brought some stuff with me, like nature guides and things like that. But the whole time, yeah, I was just really thinking, oh, this would be really great to have had done all of this before we got here. But it was still an amazing experience. We still learned a lot from it. But for me, it was like, yeah, I didn't grow up doing any of this. I haven't really done any of this in my adult life, but I knew that it was something important. And I knew that, okay, there's a reason why Charlotte Mason includes scouting and outdoor activities. And how can we make this possible in our family for someone who's like me and who's, I don't know what I'm doing now. And that's what I love about your book, that it is very guided, very scripted. Okay, you do this first and then you do this. And it's not like so overwhelming for parents. It's very doable. Do you recommend people do it in groups, or can it be just done with an individual family?
You definitely can do it with an individual family, especially if you have, I think it's more fun if you have more than one
Yeah.
student. You should at least have a couple of kids. But I think it's ideal in a group because there are a lot of games included as well. And the games are just more fun when you have a group of kids. One of the ones that was, is, I guess, a game, but there's some games where the kids are supposed to hide, be camouflaged. And
Uh-huh.
that was one of the favorites because they would take turns trying to see each other from a certain spot. And some of the kids were just so great at hiding. And there were so many great ideas. Some of them were climbing trees and hiding in the trees, something I never would have thought to do.
Yeah.
But it's fun when it's an interactive thing. The kids just love competing with each other in a fun and friendly way to see
Yes.
who can hide the best or who can listen the best and who can
Mm.
hear the footsteps of the other kids and guess who it is. So there's just a lot of fun in a
Fun.
group, but it's definitely something, even if you're not a homeschooler, just on weekends to do with your family, mom and dad, and a few kids. It's fun. It's exciting. It's fun. It feels like an adventure to
Mm.
work through it.
Yeah, I think that's the fun part. Like I've realized after our trips, yeah, it's this adventure and trying to problem solve. And is this really school, quote unquote? Because what academic things are we learning here? Is my child going to be in the military, like the example that you used? No, but even if they may never go camping or never use these things, what are they actually getting, would you say, from doing a kind of a scouting curriculum? How is it benefiting them as individuals and persons?
I think initially, because it starts off with a whole section on observation. So
Mhm.
learning how to pay attention to the world that you're living in, especially in our modern culture when so many of us are like head down
Yeah,
in a
right.
phone, not noticing the other people around us, not noticing the world, even on a level that is dangerous. People are
Right.
not aware of their
Yes.
surroundings, but
Yes.
also to be able to interact better with other people, to interact with our nature, our planet, with nature. You want to just be aware of your surroundings. A lot of people also are not aware of how their actions are affecting someone else.
Mm.
So that initial observation, knowing the world, knowing other people, paying attention to other people, paying attention to how you're perceived, how you behave for a start. But I think also, like you were saying, if you had maybe worked through it before you guys went camping, you just don't know what is going to come in handy. You don't know what knowledge you might need to know. So, again, with that, the motto of the Scouts is to be prepared. If you have a wide array of knowledge, at some point, something's going to come in handy. And
Mm.
so it does affect you as a person. It helps you to be confident, to know that enough things that you're going to be okay in different situations, or you're going to be of service to other people in different situations. So it's one of those things like you just don't know what you might need, but it's good to know that you're a capable person who's able to accomplish things, who's able to problem solve and
Mhm.
figure out what to do in an emergency situation or just anything that might come your way. So I think it builds confidence for kids, especially. And kids, they don't have a lot of control over what's going on in their world. So it's hard to give them opportunities to build that confidence so that when they're a teenager and as they grow into adulthood, they can feel good that they are going to be okay and they know what they're doing. So I
Mm.
think this is just a great way to start that, to build confidence, integrity, and I don't know. I think it's good for character.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's one of the biggest benefits of it is building that kind of that character that you can't necessarily get, I would say, in a lot of other places. Like you can read a
Yeah,
lot, and the books that we're reading and the living ideas, they're going to change your heart. They're going to make you a more empathetic person, a more caring person, a more deep thinking person. But are you able to, in the moment, serve other people, help other people, provide that kind of guidance? And this is like really practical things. It's not okay, we need help making a fire, or like we're lost, or things like that that are like, okay, this is like
yeah,
so practical. But I also feel like it really does, by doing scouting and focusing on some of the lessons in this book, it does help them with other subjects. So, like you're saying, like being able to observe, that's going to help you like in science and in math. And you wouldn't think that, but as your child develops that skill, it's going to transcend to these other subjects as well.
right.
I think about, you talk about finding directions and being able to identify constellations. That's going to enhance your later like astronomy studies someday. Being able to, like you're saying, like the knots, they're developing like the fine motor skills, and the other skills are going to help them with whatever handicraft they end up choosing. Like all
Yeah,
of these things all tie in together and really help a child excel in these other areas of learning as well. But then they're getting to do these kind of fun activities outside and develop really hands-on learning. But just after that week, just it really showed me the importance of being outside a
mhm.
lot. Because we were, I think it was like, we're trying to calculate how many hours. And Ginny was like, I don't know if we can count the ones we're sleeping in the tent. But my one son, he slept outside the whole entire time. So I'm like, that counts as outside
That
time.
counts.
I was like, even though he was sleeping, he was
You're
outside.
outside. I
But
count it.
yeah, it totally counts. But all that time that we don't normally have, really, it allowed them, like you're saying, to be able to have that adventure, to problem solve, to do things that you would never have the opportunity to have those kind of adventures and problem solve sitting in our house. We're just trying to like figure out like, how do we take a shower in the river without being pulled down by the current?
Yeah,
Things like
I
that.
never knew
I
you
know
would
that's
need to
not
know
like,
that.
yeah, that's not like covered in a scouting book, but like you learn things by doing them. And I think that's really good. So when you were doing your program, you did have several families that came in. Were there
Mhm.
any kind of obstacles or challenges that you had doing these scouting kind of lessons, or anything that you ran into that might be helpful for parents wanting to get started?
Yeah. The main issue that we had is we had typical homeschool families, so there was an age range.
Mhm.
And so what we figured out is the families that had larger families and then they had little kids. So maybe the oldest one would be 12 and then the youngest one might be 3. For
Mhm.
those families, because they had older kids that the younger kids were following behind, and the younger kids understood how homeschool life works and they understood how to follow directions even though they were young, or their mothers understood, okay, this child is too little to participate, so we're going to hang back so that this child is not a distraction for the activities. That worked really well.
Mhm.
But then we got to a point where the youngest kids of the big families were maybe like 5, 6, 7 years old. So then when new families wanted to come in, who were all littles, so
Mhm.
maybe their oldest would be 6, and
Yeah.
then they would have a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old and a baby. For those families, because the oldest child was still a very little kid and they hadn't yet figured out the homeschool vibes
Yeah.
yet, those families were a distraction for
Mhm.
the activities
Yeah.
because there were so many little ones.
Mhm. Today's episode is brought to you by A Gentle Feast. A Gentle Feast offers a complete living books curriculum, an award winning early reading program, and more tools to equip you to apply Charlotte Mason's timeless philosophy into your modern homeschool. Go to agentlefeast.com to check it out. Smooth and easy days are closer than you think.
And so what we ended up doing is saying that the oldest child had to be at least 7 years old, because that way that child could then participate with the other kids, and
Mhm.
it worked. And then we just kept, as our youngest kids of the families who participated, as they got older, we changed the age so that only kids who fit within the age range of what we had
Yeah.
would be participating.
That is-
So when our youngest kids got to be 8 and 9, we actually stopped accepting any families with all littles because they just couldn't participate at the same level as the older kids.
Yeah.
And so we had to adjust because you can do a lot more with a group of 12-year-olds than you can do with a group of 5-year-olds. So we
Yeah.
just adjusted by age. So I
Okay.
think it's better to either have a group of mostly littles or mostly older kids where the younger kids are just part of a bigger homeschool family,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
No, that totally makes sense. And I think that's really great advice because, yeah, it can be very challenging. So it can be definitely used from 5 to 12-year-olds, but when you are bringing in other families, finding, okay, this age group is where we're all centered around. And then the
Yeah,
other ones can, if they have older siblings, they're used to following along and being like the third wheel on whatever's happening with their older
exactly.
siblings. And their older siblings are used to being around younger children and explaining things. I get the whole homeschool one classroom vibe, but
Yep,
yeah, anything lower than that. And you're working with fire, right? And like things that are like,
exactly.
you don't want like a bunch of preschoolers handling. So there's that safety component as well.
Yes.
And obviously, you can have different parents help out with the younger ones, kids that are age appropriate can do some of these activities for sure. And it's not, I wouldn't say, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that was like, has more
Well,
safety concerns for.
another thing with us, just for the safety concerns, is just the ability to follow directions. So
Mm,
when we would go on hikes, I had a rule that all the children had to stay behind me so
mhm,
that if there were snakes on the trail or some other kind of danger, or if we were getting too close to a rocky ledge, I can stop them and make sure that nobody goes flying off of a rocky cliff.
right.
And and it really does depend on the age of the children, the personality of the child, and the parenting as
Mhm,
to if they can follow directions. So we had some kids who were 5 years old who did great and followed directions really well. And
yeah.
then some kids who really needed to be reined in. So it just any kind of, when you're in group situations like that, you have to be willing as the leader to say, these are the rules
Mhm.
for your good, for the
Yeah.
safety of everyone.
Yeah.
And if you're unwilling to follow the rules, then it's not a good thing for you to participate in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No,
yeah, they just have to be able to follow directions.
yes, following directions is very important when you're out in the wilderness. Very, very important.
Yes.
So, how did doing the scouting program, do you feel like how did it change your family? Or how did you see other families change and grow from using this?
Um, I think with my kids, it was exciting. So, for example, with my middle daughter, we had learned fox walking, which is how to walk quietly.
Mhm.
And she was able to get really close to a deer and a fawn, not dangerously close,
Yeah.
but close enough that she was excited that she was able to get so close. They started really paying attention to the things in nature, but not just, oh, there's a beautiful wildflower, but oh, I see the frass of a caterpillar. I bet I can find where it's coming from. And like my kids, because I'm into caterpillars, they will find me caterpillars, they find me moths and butterflies, and they find them in the craziest places. So they really learned how to just be aware of their surroundings, how to find things, and they took pleasure in it. I did notice when they get into the teen years, there's a drop off,
Mhm.
but my oldest child has suddenly gotten really interested in insects and snails. And so she's been going out and finding snails. She has pet snails now, which has been really cool. She's 16 and she decided she's going to have snails for pets. I think even when you're not really seeing what it's doing,
Mhm.
you see the fruit later.
Yep. Yep. So Charlotte Mason, typical of everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not
And
something we
even,
can measure today. Yeah.
yes. And I'll say too, with being prepared, they're they have things on hand. At one point, we had packed bags to have like band-aids and first aid things and stuff like that. My middle daughter, again, she had all kinds of stuff in her purse, ready to go. So when I tripped on my heels
Oh
and
no.
fell and skinned my knee, she had band-aids and like stuff ready to go to clean me up.
I love that.
And all on her own. She just does that on her own. So you see it in little ways that it's sinking in, they're
Yeah.
paying attention, which is cool.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So we have your book on agentlefeast.com and then the scouting kit, which includes a bag and the badge stickers and some flashcards and an orienteering compass and all that fun stuff to help families get started on it. And I just love, like, my son and I read The Wild Robot, and just the robot, he has to learn all this stuff because he's on an island. He was never programmed to understand any of this stuff about nature and how to protect himself and how to make a shelter. Like all this stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, this ties in so well with this book of skills that you would need. And I think it would just having that kind of background knowledge, and then reading the book will really help kids, or watching the movie, whichever one, to go, oh, I can totally understand what this robot is feeling and going through, and I can do this in my own life, and get them excited for trying something different. And I think that would be a really great opportunity for some families to get other families involved that may not have wanted to try something outdoorsy. But I feel like your book makes it so easy to follow. And again, teaching them so many things that are going to translate to all their other subjects and all the other academic pursuits that they're working on in their programs. Do you have any closing thoughts as we wrap up here for parents who are considering adding something like this to their homeschool, but they're worried about maybe possibly adding too much, or are we ready, or in our kind of fast pace, fill our kids' activities with a million things? It can be really hard to go, okay, how can I do this and do, but in a way that's not overwhelming to everyone. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think for starters, it's easier than you think it's going to be. Because again, I tried to make it as easy as possible. I made it for someone who was like me, who knew absolutely nothing about any of this stuff. So it's easier than you think. And I think that the kids enjoy it so much, especially if you're having a difficult time with academics, because most of us grew up in the public school system, and so we're used to the idea of you're supposed to hit these certain milestones at different ages. But then when you start homeschooling, you realize that's not realistic and that every child is different. Some of them, one of my children didn't really care about reading until she was about 8. So
Mhm.
she didn't really learn it because she didn't really care. But what she did care about was being outside and learning things outside. So I think for children, especially that might not excel in academics, it gives them an area that they can excel in. And that can be such an encouragement to a child who feels like they're struggling, to
Mhm.
find that, oh, I'm not stupid. Nothing's wrong with me. I can learn and I can accomplish things. So I think that's a good option for families who are maybe struggling with some academic issues. But then just for anyone who feels like it's maybe too much to add. We did it when I met with my group, it was once a month. There's no set schedule for how fast you have to go through these things. You can do it as often as a couple times a week if you want to. You can work through it slowly, but still often, and really master all the skills really well. Or you can just do it once a month with friends in a group and keep it as a light, fun activity. So you can do it as intensely or as easy as you feel comfortable and as your family wants to, because it's not like a typical curriculum where you're checking all the boxes. It's
Yes.
really free, it's really open. You can do it some seasons, and then when it's too cold outside, you can take a little break or focus on the stars. So it's just really flexible, and easy and fun and exciting.
I'm so glad you brought up both of those points, because I feel like, yes, this isn't, you must do this in this order and you must do one of these lessons a week, or like you're saying, like checking off the boxes. And it's so tempting as homeschool parents to do that with anything that says curriculum on it.
Yeah.
But that this is, again, a tool and a resource, and you can make it work. And I'm assuming if you guys only met once a month, it probably took you a year or two, right? To go
Oh
through
yeah,
all.
we took a few years
Yeah,
because
yeah.
sometimes we do one lesson several times
Hmm.
because there are different activities in there. So there are multiple activities to reinforce the lessons. So yeah, we took several years to work through the whole book.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, just fit it in and do what works for you. But I also love that you brought up the point about that this can be a really big blessing for kids who are maybe struggling in other academic areas. And I would also think, like, just leadership wise, like it's going to
Hmm.
develop leadership skills. You were talking about giving the kids confidence that they may not feel confident in other areas, but they can lead
Yeah.
And that is such a wonderful gift that we're able to give our children, that they don't have to fit in this box of reaching this milestone by this point and doing these 5 academic tasks by this grade, that they're able to excel in other things. And that really will develop their leadership. But doing this kind of scouting in a group setting also develops that. Were you able to see that in your group at all?
Yes, definitely. And that is a great point that you make, that it allows for leadership. It was neat too to see that some of the younger kids who were maybe better at something when they really excelled, and
Mm,
then the older kids were excited and got behind them like, wow, you did that so great. That was such a cool idea. Or you found me and I didn't think anyone could find me. So it does help them to boost their confidence and realize again that they're capable, they can take the lead. And even if they're young or if they're little, they can be really good at something and then teach others. My son, he's in trail life now. And
okay.
we had done a lot of these things already.
Yeah.
And so he was excited to go and be like, yeah, I already know how to build fires. I know how to use a compass.
Yeah.
So then he's able to, show the younger kids, or even just not be the kid who needs a whole lot of help, which is great for the leaders
Right.
to not have to focus so much time on him. Yeah, so there's so many benefits that you really don't see until you're living it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So we'll put the links to all of this in the show notes. Do you have anything else that you would like to mention, or how can people find you?
I'm on Instagram at just Brittney McGann. And then I did do a series of articles which are available on Charlotte Mason Poetry. I also did a plenary on scouting for the LER, the Living Education Retreat. And so that audio is available on Charlotte Mason Poetry as well.
Okay.
So if people want to go dig a little deeper and hear more of the academic points made about scouting, you can find them there.
Okay, yeah, we'll definitely put all that in the show notes. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for writing this book and making it accessible for parents to offer this to their children.
Thanks for having me. It was so nice to talk to you. And thank you for putting out the scouting program, because it's great to have other homeschool moms who are doing like you're doing with your curriculum, which we use and love, to be able to put out resources that are helping the homeschool community.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Hey, thanks for listening to today's episode. Let me quickly recap the key takeaways. First of all, scouting is incredibly valuable educationally. Scouting combines practical knowledge with hands-on learning. It emphasizes observation, citizenship, and problem solving. It enhances academic subjects like science and geography. Scouting builds confidence and leadership. It allows children to apply skills in real-life situations, fostering leadership and personal growth in ways that traditional academics might not. Scouting enhances holistic learning. Scouting fits seamlessly into Charlotte Mason's philosophy of education, complementing nature study, handicrafts, geography, and more, while promoting a holistic development for the child. Getting started with scouting is easy. Brittney's book, Scouting for Wild One, is beginner-friendly and adaptable for both individual, families, and groups. It makes the process of introducing scouting to your homeschool less intimidating and more accessible. And scouting offers great long-term benefits. Scouting can be done at your own pace, allowing families to tailor it to their schedules. The skills learned, like observation, survival tactics, and teamwork, have long-lasting impacts on children's personal development. If you would like to get started on using Scouting for Wild Ones, we now have Scouting for Wild One kits that are being released in tandem with the movie The Wild Robot. So when you purchase one of these kits, you get a cute little Scouting for Wild Ones bag with an orienteering compass and flashlight. It also contains adorable little badge stickers and flashcards to help enrich the lessons in the Scouting for Wild Ones guide. It also includes a free book club guide for creating a Wild Robot book club with some of your homeschooling friends. So that is a great resource to enhance the movie, and the movie and the book Scouting for Wild Ones really tie in well together and will create wonderful memories and experiences for your children. So go to adentalfeast.com, all products and outdoor resources, and you will find all of our scouting materials there. Thanks for listening. Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this episode, please heart it down below and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. Leave a comment and let me know what you learned in today's episode. I'd love to hear from you.